Since the 40th anniversary update of Flight Simulator 2020 is out. So this is the Airbus A310, and that's where we're gonna have a look at. We're not gonna, I would say, start the engines or anything, but we're just gonna look at the details. Keep an eye on my channel because I will post some more videos about this aircraft because I really love flying airliners. So this is the aircraft, right? It's currently loaded with the Xbox livery, but there are far more, right? You've got the let's say the Flight Simulator livery, and also let's say the World Orbit one, and the most I think there's another one which is, I would say, coming from the old school Flight Simulator versions. And here you can see the details, right? So some of the details are really, I would say, nice, but there is still some detail missing for this one. For example, you can see that there's really some usage here, and also the letters are really clear on this one. But if you would look at this specific piece, there could be some more modeling, right? That's unfortunately it's not as detailed as some of the other aircrafts, for example, the paid versions. If we go under the wing, we can see some more details. If we look from a distance, you can see that all the details are shown here. But here again, right there, it looks like that there needs to be some optimization on this part because it's, say, not the quality which you might have hoped for. Coming to the wheels, right here we can see the wheels of the aircraft, including the, I would say, mechanism which, I would say, pulls in the gears, right? If we do gears up. And if we would look at this specific part, it's also pretty detailed here, right? With all the letters, etc. But if you look at this one, this also looks nice. But if you go into these specific parts, you can see that there's, would say, it's a little bit blurry or something. While if you look at the wheels themselves, and then this part, it's really detailed. But hey, we shouldn't complain, right? Because this is a free aircraft, which is being part of the 40th anniversary update. And over here, when we zoom a little bit out, we can see all the details, right? All the instruments of the aircraft, including, let's say, some letters here. Captain, right? Standby. Then here's the FD. Also some nice details here. And that's what surprised me, is that some of the things are really detailed, while other parts of the aircraft are, I would say, between brackets, less detailed. So what's pretty smart, what they've done is they kind of, let's say, mimicked the passengers, right? Because if you look from this angle, you would say, hey, there are passengers in the aircraft, there are at least chairs in the aircraft. But if you would go in, you would really see nothing, because the aircraft is completely empty, as with most aircrafts, with the exception of, I would say, the back part where you can see the say chairs of the what is it? Flight attendants, and also the, of course, the doors, which you can open, which contain a lot of detail on the outside. But as you can see here, this is not colored, but it could be due to the livery. If we go back to the wing, we do see the same, right? So we see a little bit of, let's say, usage here. Let's say, I'm not sure if it's really usage. And then here we can see the wing or the tail. With the moving part, right, which is, I would say, not painted. But if we look at the details from this, let's say, wing, you can see that, again, it's really detailed for most of the wings, but there could be some more detail over here. But that's probably is a decision which I would say, because it's probably time consuming, right? Going to the other part of the aircraft, we can see a lot of things like the jet fuel indications, also the emergency exits, of course. And then it's time to go inside the cockpit, right? And inside the cockpit we will see some nice things. So let's do that. In front of the cockpit, I need to decrease the speed. Still too fast. Decreasing it again. It becomes better. We can see the kitchen, right, of the aircraft, and also the flight attendants' chairs. And then we can go inside the cockpit, where we see the two pilots and a lot of panels. So let's go inside, and then let's have a look around. So what we do see is on the back we see a lot of fuses, right? They're fuses, for electricity, right? So they can be pulled, switched on or off. We can see an additional chair here, and the nice thing is that you can open the door to the cockpit, open and close, by simply clicking on it. And you can see that there's, I would say, a lot of time spent on the chair, I would say on the texture of the chair. Starting at the left side, we see the Flypad. And the Flypad contains, I would say, a few options. Like on the bottom, you can change the let's say aircraft status, right? Cool and dark, which simply means you need to do everything. It's on GPU, which means it's powered by an external power unit, or on the APU, which means it's powered by an internal power unit and ready for takeoff. Well, you would expect it, right? Then you can really, I would say, go airborne. Inside there is the Airbus version, right? So it's an Airbus A310 304 version 1.1.4. So it's already 1.1.4, right? So it's not 1.0 release, which you might have expected. And then inside the flight details, we can see the ICAO code for the departing airport and the arriving airport. In this case, there's nothing because there's no flight plan programmed. But as soon as you will do it, you will see that it will be updated here. If we go to this one, we can see that this is, I would say, kind of the settings menu, where we see the same 4 statuses being displayed as we saw earlier in the main screen. And this is where you can change the active mode by changing it here. So you can do it either from this menu or from the other menu. But here you've got an additional option, and that's to set it as default. So let's assume that you want to change the default to be on the GPU. Then you can go to this menu and then set it as default. If you want to change it in the future, you can always select one of the other modes and then go back. If you want to change it on the fly, you simply click the activate button. Then we're going to the power menu, which gives you access to the ground surfaces. And what are those ground surfaces? Well, one of them is the external power unit, right, which is currently connected. You've got the jetway and you've got the ASU. Not sure what the ASU is, so let's give that a try, and let's also try to connect the jetway, and let's open some doors, which we can do using these buttons, right? You can currently see that they're in transit initially, and then they're becoming green once the door has been opened. So that's nice. In addition to that, we've got the pushback controls. Normally you would control the pushback controls using the ATC menu, but for this one you can use the pushback controls from within the Flypad, which is, I would say, really cool, because you can say prepare for pushback and departure, and then use, I would say, these arrows to, I would say, being pushed back. The nice thing is that all the actions which you perform are also seen here, right? So in this case, I can see that this door is open and that there's a stair connected, and this one is also open with some additional menu or some additional components, which we will figure out in a few minutes, as well as the back of the aircraft. So let's do that first. Let's have a look at what's currently on the back or attached to the aircraft. Well, this is the cargo door, right? So the cargo door, as you can see, there's nothing attached to it yet. If we go to the back, we also see that there's a cargo door there. It's a much smaller one, but also nothing attached. But if we would move to this angle, we can see that the door is open, and for some reason it says jetway connected, but there's one thing which you need to be aware of, and that in case of this airport there's no jetway, then is the, I would say, flight sim so smart that it will attach the stairway? Well, as you can see, it's not really smart because it doesn't do it. So be aware that this menu, although it shows these options here, it might not work as expected. The same is for the ASU. If you know what ASU stands for, let me know, because I tried to find it, but I couldn't find it. And if I would say disable it, you can also see that there are no changes there, right? So we're gonna close the doors again. You can do that either by closing the doors individually or by pressing close all, which will, as you can expect, close all the doors. So let's do that for now. Going to the next menu. That's the checklist. So this is the normal checklist, which allows you to quickly go to the checklist, and that can be used, I would say, in addition to the checklist, which is part of the flight sim. And that one is here. But in this case, this is a very long list, right? I will not go to it, go through it during this video, but in a future video we will go through it and see, and I will show you how you can use it. So really cool that they have added these kind of additional steps in the simulator in the checklists. Then for the people who do know fly-by-wire, do probably recognize this calculator. Using this calculator, you can calculate the flex temperature, but also the V1, VR and V2, which are the speeds for the engines, right? The decision moments if you want to take off or if you want to abort the takeoff. That's being split in the runway conditions, where you can specify the length of the runway, you can specify the condition of the runway, and also the angle of the runway, right? So the angle is, I would say, is it straight or is there a specific angle of the runway, as far as I figured out. Then we've got the wind, so the direction and the speed, and the OAT, which is the temperature also, and the QNH, which you need to specify. In addition to that, you need to define the aircraft configuration. So what's the weight of the aircraft? Well, the weight from the aircraft, right? If you're familiar with Flight Simulator, you probably already know, but this is where you can get the weight of the aircraft, and you can see here that we can add a lot of things here, right? There's some pilots which we can extend, the forward baggage, rear baggage, and there's of course the payload of the passengers, which we can, I would say, either increase or decrease. Then here we've got the flaps. So flaps 15.0, and the anti-ice is currently set to off and the air conditioning is on. Based on that, you can press the calculate button. If I would do it right now, it will say, hey, you need to put in these values, right? Because you didn't specify them. So make sure that you specify these values, and I will go in, I would say I will do that in the next video, not in this one. Based on that, it will show you the flex temperature and will also move these items to the correct positions, right? The decision positions, because currently all of them are on the same spot, which is, I would say, not normally the case, because you will say V1, then VR for V rotate, and then V2, and then go ahead. Then we've got the balance, and this is the balance, right? So you can either get the balance from the weight from this menu, or you can get it from the mass and balance menu, which also indicates the packs, the cargo, and the fuel. And this one can be moved, right? So you can increase the mass, you can increase the packs, you can increase the cargo, and increase the fuel. And this is the planned state, right? Which is also known as the load sheet. So if you make changes here, you will see that these numbers will change, right? You just saw it. The payload is now A320. If I would decrease it back to normal, it will show the initial value. Once you've done that, you can click apply, and then it will add the edit, and it will become the live view. Because the live view is the, I would say, weight of the aircraft, including the fuel, etc. Based on what the current status is, and you can't change the values here anymore. This will show you the center of gravity, right? That's the CG. It's 28%, 0.4 up. So it's over here, and that will also be influenced by the load sheet in most cases. As last one, we've got the settings menu, and the settings menu allows you to change how the aircraft behaves. One of the things is the units. You can set it either to a kilogram or to lbs. You can make changes to the IRS alignment. That's the navigation alignment. If you set it to realistic, it will take you a few minutes before the aircraft has aligned the IRS. But if you want to make it shorter or want to do it instant, you can use the other options. Then you've got the link instruments. To be honest, I couldn't find, I would say, an option where this one is used for, so still trying to figure that out. And we've got the nose wheel steering, which can be either set to on or off, which will make it able to for you to steer the wheel. Reset the brake temperature. This aircraft has, I would say, a component which lets you cool down the brakes. If they're overheating the brakes, then you can still reset it by using this option. And this is the default throttle reduction / acceleration altitude, and that's where you can change to either 1000 AL or 1500 AL. This is the default option. It will probably influence the throttling, but not sure, or the thrust, but not sure what it actually does. I'm still trying to figure it out in a manual. Then the last two options are correlated to each other. So first you need to figure out if you have a throttle which has the reverse capability, right? So if you would have specific joysticks with the throttle, then some of them have the reverse throttling option. So if that's the case, you need to set this option to yes. If you don't have reverse throttling, then you need to set it to no before hitting the tap to calibrate. Because the tap to calibrate will remap how the thrust levelers are working. So if I'm gonna set it up, I'll simply press start calibration and then confirm that in this case they're in the idle position, which is the case. So we'll say, hey, they're in the current position. Then I will move them to touch and go, right? And you can see that there's a difference between the, let's say, throttles here. So that's pretty interesting. What you can do in addition to that, you can have a look at the position over here, which in some cases shows you, okay, hey, this is the position where they should be in. But in this case, touch and go, press completely forward, and then I will say save the calibration. Once the calibration is saved, you will see that they will act accurately, as you can see here. If you have got issues with this, then you probably need to recalibrate the joystick. Once that's done, you need to press the back to settings to return to the settings menu, where you can change the audio options, which means the volume for engines, exterior and interior. The other options are shown here, right? The EFB, the electronic flight bag, also known as the Flypad, which brings you to the home screen. As you can see, you can press it and you can increase or decrease the brightness if you want. And if you want to bring it up again, simply press the home screen. So that was the electronic flight bag or the Flypad. Then we've got a lot of components here, right? So let's start at the top. So I'm gonna move around a bit using this arrow, and then I will show you all the buttons which are here. So the cool thing is that they really spent some time on, I would say, quality. So you can see that a lot of the buttons are, I would say, working. Some of them have, I would say, the texture could be updated a little bit more or a little bit more fancy. But what we will have here is we've got the pitch feel, the rudder feel, or the rudder travel imagery, the slats, the flaps, the servos, the hydraulic power, which is over here. Here we've got the lights, right, which will also include, I would say, the light within the cockpit, and of course the buttons to switch on the seat belts and no smoking. Then if we move to the second part, we can see the anti-eye settings and the APU. And this is, I would say, kind of everything for the electrical part, right? So you can see the electrical power is here, so we can switch on the batteries, which are over here, three. Standby generator, guard, but also here we've got the APU, and we can see if there's external power available. So keep in mind that this part is really important, and I will show you in the next video when starting the engine. Then here we've got the pitch trim and the yaw dampers, which we can activate to on or off. That's all, I'd say, described in the checklist when you need to do that. And here we've got the ATSs and the engine trim guard. Below the anti-ice, which we just discussed, which is both, I would say, available for the engines to prevent freezing engines or freezing the wings. We've got the external lights, which means the strobes, the beacons, the runways, the navigation logos, the landing lights, etc. Moving to another position, we see the wipers, right? Simply if it rains, you can use them. And also here's the APU. And the APU, right? Remember, one of the positions to put the aircraft in is the APU mode, is compared to the external power unit, right? The GPU. And this is where you need to switch on several things. Let's say once you are starting the aircraft, and this is of course the other most important part, is these are the options to switch on the aircraft. Then we're coming to the fuel, because without fuel we can't do much. And here you will find all the pumps as well as the fuel cross feeds, which makes it possible to exchange fuel between the different parts of the aircraft. Keep in mind that in the checklist it's a little bit vague what you need to do with it, but make sure that you're switching these things on, because else, well, not a lot will happen. Then we've got the oxygen part, both for the passenger but also for the crew. And the cargo compartment smoke detection, right? So simply prevention if something burns in the, let's say, compartment, cargo compartment. The probe heats, where you can switch on the window heaters, also for multiple options. And then here's some, I would say, pressure meters, which you need to keep an eye on when, I would say, starting the aircraft, but also when flying around. Here we've got the APU bleed, so the air bleeds, right? So for air conditioning, etc. And if we move here, we can see the cargo temperature, which we can, I would say, focus on. Zooming out a bit makes it hard to show, so let me reset the view again, and then try to show you what's over here, although it's kind of hard. Here we go. Here we've got the electric indication, or that's where I would say the AC bus and the DC bus and the different modes which you can put them in. Normally ESS and EMR are the correct ones, but you can also switch to the generator, APU generator, external power. So this makes it possible to switch to the different power modes. The landing gears indication, the ventilation or the valve, sorry, so the vents, cool override, cool control, extract valve, a lot of those options. And then we've got the IRS, which is really important over here, right? So the IRS, that's something we talked about a few minutes back. You need to align the IRS to make sure that you can use the navigation. And let me try to come into a different position where I can show more clear. So this is the IRS sys and the IRS display, which will influence this display. But also what you will see here is 3 IRSs. One of them is kind of hidden. So the first one is here, the second one is here, and the third one is here. So make sure that you align all 3 of them, because else it will show you a warning in the displays that you can't, I would say, that IRS 3 is not aligned. And here we've got a lot of fuses again. So that's the top part of the aircraft. Going downstairs, right? We can hide the yoke. And if we look at the left side, we can see all the information for the captain. So we can increase the brightness, we can I would say change the loudspeaker volume, although that's not working. And then we've got the terrain mode for the GPWS. You can say captain terrain mode, you can say GPS flap switch, and here are several other buttons which you can use to influence what's being shown on the screen. Then starting at the left, which is the captain seat, is the speedometer, right, in knots. Then we've got the DME 1 and 2 and the VOR beacons. And then here we've got 2 displays which are currently switched off, and also the option to say, okay, hey, captain terrain radar. And also, of course, the compass, in which direction are we flying, really important. Then over here we got the clock, which we can set to run, hold, slow or fast, which will allow you to change the clock. And also here we've got the altimeter, right, which shows the altitude which we're currently on, but also the altimeter which you might need to change. Moving a little bit further to the right, so to the center, we can see the horizon, which is the backup horizon in case the displays are not working, and also the slats and the flaps, which you can control, right? Here we've got another altimeter in case the primary one breaks, and then of course we've got the brake and the acupressure, right? And also of course the auto brake, and the auto brake can be used for landing, but also for takeoff, right? You can set it to max in case you need to abort the landing. It will slow down the aircraft. Then inside the center, you'll see everything which is related to the engines. We can see the N1 meters, we can see the EGTs, which are, I would say, the temperature of which comes out of the engines, the N2 RPMs, and then here we've got the FFs, I'm not sure what it stands for, and of course the oil temperature and oil, I would say, I think it's quantity, QT, right? So the pressure, or sorry, this one is not the temperature, it's the pressure, and the quantity, also important to keep an eye on. Moving to this one is the landing elevation, right? So what's the elevation of the runway, which you need to take into account. And then of course here we've got the several buttons which allow you to switch on the brake fan, detect the position, and also do the landing gear warning test to make sure that the warning system works. In this system we've got the toggle TRPs, and I'm not sure what it stands for, to be honest, so that's something I need to figure out. And also the throttle limit and the limb mode, which will probably influence how the aircraft is, I would say, or how throttling is being limited, as well as several other options which we can use here to change. And then we're coming to the right side, right, which is the co-pilot's piece, so not important for us now. Then if we move to the top, we can see the brightness of the displays, but also the options to change the navigation mode and switch on the flight director, as well as configuring the DH for the captain and the FPA for the captain, as well as set the DH knob, right, which is sometimes required in the checklist. It's mentioned that you need to set the DH to minus 0.5, so that's where you can use this knob for. And of course here are the buttons to switch between the different modes and ranges for the displays. These buttons, I almost think that they forgot to, I would say, model them, because they're, I would say, really low quality compared to the rest of the aircraft. But maybe that will, I would say, will be fixed in the future, and here you can switch between the different modes. Then coming to the center, we have all the autopilot things, right? The auto throttle, the speed knob, where you can set the maximum speed, the altitude knob, which will allow you to set the altitude select mode. And here we've got the option to set the altitude to hold, level change. If we made a change here to the select mode, we can press this button to make sure that the aircraft goes into the correct mode. We've got the profile mode, and that one is, I think, the VNAV mode. Right, the VNAV mode is where you simply, let's say, set the altitude also in the flight plan, and then when using the VNAV mode, it will make sure that it flies on the correct altitude when you're, I would say, approaching, or when you're close to a VOR or to another beacon. Then here we've got the navigation mode, which is either set to the heading knob, which allows you to fly in a specific heading, and then you can set it to heading select mode, or you can use the nav mode, which will use the flight plan which you configured. VS, vertical speed, which will allow you to set the, I would say, climb mode. So how much do you want to climb? The VOR lock mode, that's used for landing, lock, localizer, and the landing mode. And then of course the two buttons to switch on the autopilot, as well as the CWS CMD mode. I think this is to cancel it, but I'm not 100% sure about that. That's something I need to figure out. Here we've got the brightness mode to influence the MCDU, right? So we can set the brightness mode for the MCDU, which is over there. Other than that, there's nothing more here. So let's move again to the center, and then I would say move around over here, right? So let's do that. And what do we see here? Well, again, a lot, right? We can see the MCDUs, which are currently switched off. We can see the VORs, the cores and the megahertz, as well as the ILS. And for 2, we can see the throttle over here. We can see the flaps and the slats, which are over here. So it looks like that slats and flaps are actually looks like the same word, because you can manipulate them using the same button. On both ends, we've got the pitch trim, right? It's currently set to neutral takeoff. You might want to change the trim if you want to climb and I would say flying around. And then we've got the speed brake. Here's the acupressure charge, where we can change the acupressure charge, because below it is the parking brake itself, right? To set the parking brake. Below the throttles is the engine mode, where we can set the mixture, and the mixture is either on or off. There's nothing more you can change, and if you leave it off, it will not work, right? It won't start the engines. Normal cancellation mode, emergency call guard, and also the takeoff configuration test, which will make sure that everything you configured is according correctly for the correct takeoff. Then on both the left and right side, we've got the buttons to manipulate the VHF, the frequencies for the ADFs, but also for the VHF1 and VH1 standby, right? And here, say below the parking brake, that's normally this one, you can switch them. And VHF 1 and 2 are actually VOR 1 and 2, as you saw here, using a sneak tip here, but you can switch on which one will become active. Using these buttons, you can change the megahertz and kilohertz, right? So keep that in mind, there are actually 2 buttons. Here we've got the transponder code, which is really important because this will also allow you to set the transponder codes to the mode where you're gonna detect other aircrafts, sometimes important. And here we've got the brightness for the ECAMs. ECAMs are shown here, the displays, and below that are the options which you can use to define which ECAM mode or ECAM display, or actually information which is going to be displayed on the ECAMs will be shown. Then we've got the air trim and the rudder trim over here, as well as the button to reset the rudder trim, which is part of the start process. And going down, we can change again the brightness. We can change the weather mode, weather radar, the weather system, and the weather WXR, the gain. And here we've got another display, really nice. Over here we've got a printer. Not sure if the printer really works, but that's something we will figure out and say in a future video. So with this, I would say, are ending our review or our update movie about the A310, right? So you can see that there are a lot of details in this aircraft, and I was looking forward to try everything off. I of course already looked at the checklist. It was really impressive. So looking forward for a new video to create about how this one is, how you can get it started, but also of course how to fly with this one. So keep an eye on my channel for new videos. Here ends this one. I hope you liked it. If you liked it, then consider to use the like button. If you got questions or comments, then feel free to post them in the comment box below. And if you want to stay up to date about new videos I'm posting, then make sure that you're subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching and see you next time.